Hello, everyone, and welcome to our April quarterly update for the National Scleroderma Foundation. I'm Mary Wheatley, and it is my pleasure to serve as Chief Executive Officer for the foundation. So grateful to everyone for joining us today. Today's update is going to focus on our research pillar. So to get started, wanted to share with you what our research programs are at the foundation, and you can learn more about any of these programs by visiting scleroderma.org/research. So most of you are probably aware of our peer-reviewed research grants program, which I'm going to go over in a bit more detail on today's call, but wanted to be sure you were also aware of some of our other programming and research. And this includes a quarterly webinar series called our Advances in Scleroderma Research Global webinar. And this is a quarterly webinar that includes updates from top researchers around the world on scleroderma research. Really incredible turnout at these webinars and really incredible speakers that our volunteers are able to bring together. We also have mentorship programs in the form of an early career investigator workshop that is also held quarterly with virtual and in-person meetings meant to foster and provide mentorship to early career investigators who are interested in scleroderma research. And then we also have pre-doctoral fellowships for that same purpose to provide support to students who are interested in scleroderma research. And then, of course, we also have a research and treatment center program whereby we designate qualified research and treatment centers, primarily academic medical centers across the country, as National Scleroderma Foundation designated research and treatment centers. And this allows us to refer these centers to people looking for care for their loved ones or for themselves in scleroderma. And we can refer with confidence knowing that these centers have gone through a vetting process to ensure that they have the specialists that are needed to care for people living with scleroderma. So this includes specialists in rheumatology, pulmonology, cardiology, dermatology, and others. These sites also, beyond having clinical care for these populations, are also engaged in research. This year is our 25th anniversary, and we're very excited to celebrate all year long. Right now, we're really focusing on our research accomplishments. And so looking back over the past 25 years and all of the wonderful investigators and institutions that we've funded, just wanted to share a few statistics with you all. Over the past 25 years, we have invested $30.8 million in scleroderma research through this peer-reviewed grants program. That has gone to 171 investigators at 78 institutions. So those are the unique number of investigators that have been funded, with some being funded more than once. And then, of course, several institutions, 78 across the world, being funded again, some more than once. And when we track actually our Scleroderma Foundation funded investigators against those that are funded by the NIH over the same time period, and actually starting after our grants program started, there's actually another $97 million in NIH funding that is generated by these investigators. So that's a 315% return on our investment of $30 million. So really, really incredible. Thank you to everyone who has supported this program and to all of our investigators doing this really great work. If you look at the dollars in terms of what the foundation has provided in terms of research dollars over the years, and then what the NIH has funded, just to give scale here, the NIH dollars are shown in tens of thousands because those are many tens of millions of dollars compared to our millions. You can see that there's actually some trends there in terms of those peaks and valleys. And so that demand in certain years going up and the quality going up as well, allowing us to fund more. And then a big spike here for our SCORE grants. And then when we doubled our research funding as well. So really cool to see that there's a correlation there in terms of the investigator community between the foundation's funding and the NIH funding over that 25-year time frame. So as we know, when we're funding research grants, we also want to look at how is that information getting out into the community, whether it's the academic community or the community at large. And so one way we track that is by tracking publications. And so when we look at, again, that 25-year history in PubMed and look at how many scleroderma publications there have been over the last 25 years, it's really encouraging to see that when the foundation was first created back in 1998, there were just over 400 scleroderma publications that year. And that has really skyrocketed, more than tripled, to where now there are closer to more than 1,300 publications in 2021. So again, something we'll continue to track, but really encouraging to see the growth in the scleroderma research space as this knowledge is shared across the research community and across the practice community as well, as these findings are actually put into standard of care. Wanted to share this quote from one of our longtime medical and scientific advisory board members, Dr. Varga. I love that he said, the goal of this program really is to nurture a community of scleroderma innovators where no one needs to work in isolation, and we can build on ideas to accelerate advances in the field and bring them to the clinic promptly. And that's exactly the purpose of research, right? That we can go through all of this important work and see, oops. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Here's the publication slide. But really the purpose of funding all of this research is making sure, of course, we want to find a cure, but there are incremental things along the way that we want to share so that they do end up in practice and actually improve the quality of lives for people living with these diseases. So love that quote from Dr. Varga, and thank you for sharing that with us. So just to give you a little insight into the peer review process and kind of the cycle that we work through for our peer-reviewed research grants program. It actually all starts very soon for this next cycle of funding coming up, where we will be publishing what we call our call for applications. And that just lets all the investigators know that the application process is open. They can start submitting their ideas, and then those proposals are due each fall in September. We then convene experts in the field, our peer reviewers, to come together and review all of the proposals that we receive. And they come together and actually meet face to face after they've reviewed and scored everything and go through project by project to give a final score and ranking to each of those so that they can make a funding recommendation to the board. So the board looks at the funding recommendations and draws a line, typically around the high impact grants. And then approves the funding, and then we notify all of the investigators whether they were funded or not, and then projects begin relatively quickly, so within 90 days of that notice of award in April. So we have projects that have just started, and you're starting to hear about those now, and I'm going to share one of them with you today. And then for the ones that have been in progress for the last 2 years or 3 years, we get progress reports annually from these investigators. So you can have confidence in supporting research at the foundation because we're getting reports on the progress every year to make sure that they're on track, that they're meeting benchmarks, and that they're meeting recruitment goals and the things that they set out to do. We can also then provide support and connect them with others in the community if they're not meeting those benchmarks. And then final reports for those who finish their grants in the summer are due in the fall, and so that just provides a reconciliation. This is everything we accomplished. This is our spend down on the grant, and then they return any unused funds as well. So we're able to recycle those funds into a next round. So I shared this on a previous call, but I think it's worth sharing again. So for last year, the cycle that we went through, this is how it shook out. And so in the spring issue of the Voice magazine, you got to see all of the new awardees that were announced, and we're actually rolling out interviews with them now that you can see on YouTube. The first one is out with Dr. Andrea Bajor. And then in the summer Voice, we're going to do a deep dive into research, so you'll see even more. But essentially, the research committee went through this entire process with the peer review committee last year, and then the recommendations went to the board, and all of the projects that were rated high impact, so they scored 30 or better, those were funded by the board. And so they were announced. We funded $1.6 million in new grants, and that included 3 new investigator awards and 5 established investigator awards. And so that makes a 30% success rate. And so if you look back over the last 3 years, what the success rate is, you can see it's in line with what it has been, around 30%. So that's just, how many were funded out of the total pool that applied. We saw a huge uptick last year in the number of applications when we announced that we doubled the research funding. We increased the size of the awards. So not quite as many this last round, but definitely keeping an eye on that. We would love to see as many as possible, and of course, see how they compete in peer review as well. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see how it broke down in terms of the awards that were funded this last cycle that have just started this spring, in terms of the type of science or the type of project that they are. So 3 basic science projects, 1 that's more basic / translational, 2 purely translational, 1 clinical project, and then 1 health services research. And the foundation's portfolio is very broad. It's open to all types of science. It's a global portfolio. It's open to applicants all over the world. It traditionally has seen more basic and translational projects, but I think it's so important to show that we are open to all of these projects, and they do compete well in peer review as well. So hopefully we'll see more and more clinical and outcomes health services research type grants come through as well, because those are increasingly important as well. So I would love for you to hear from one of our investigators this year, who just started her project looking at developing classification criteria for juvenile systemic sclerosis. So Dr. Suzanne Lee, I had a chance to sit down and chat with her, and I'm going to let you hear right from her about her project.
Hi, so my name is Suzanne Lee. I'm a pediatric rheumatologist at the Joseph M. Sansari Children's Hospital at Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine in Hackensack, New Jersey. And I'm really very happy to talk to you about my project developing classification criteria for juvenile systemic sclerosis, an international effort to enable pediatric-focused clinical trials.
Can you describe for us, in layman's terms, why your research project is promising for children and parents living with scleroderma?
Okay, thank you. So, so similar to adult onset disease, juvenile onset systemic sclerosis is one of the most severe pediatric rheumatic diseases. It's associated with substantial morbidity and a significant mortality risk. In the prospective North American registry run by the pediatric rheumatology organization called CARA, Childhood Arthritis and Rheumatology Research Alliance, over a third of the children and teens in that prospective registry had limited function at some time, which is a much higher frequency than was found for the other major pediatric rheumatic diseases such as lupus, dermatomyositis, and juvenile arthritis. So there's a great need to improve the care and outcome of the patients or the kids with juvenile systemic sclerosis. No clinical trials have been conducted in juvenile systemic sclerosis, so care recommendations are based upon extrapolation from adult trials and also trials of other pediatric rheumatic diseases. But there's many differences in disease pattern between juvenile and adult onset disease, so this is really suboptimal. And these differences include a much higher frequency of diffuse cutaneous subtype and overlap subtype in the kids versus adults. In adults, the limited cutaneous is the most common subtype. In adults, the diffuse cutaneous subtype is associated with the anti-Scleroderma 70 antibody, while this antibody is much less common in kids, even though it's the most common subtype. So there's differences in the disease pattern. In addition, the diffuse cutaneous in adults is associated with poor prognosis. Well, fortunately, the frequency of major internal organ involvements and mortality is much, much lower in kids. Okay, but kids have these unique problems. So a major one that we're concerned about is their growth and development. So this disease is affecting things like their ability to eat normally. So in that CARE registry, 28% of the kids had malnutrition, which is extremely high and really frightening. And so they're not going to grow normally if they can't absorb the nutrients. In addition, they have problems such as arthropathy, muscle atrophy, decreased bone growth. So their childhood and their adult life can be severely impacted if we don't improve upon these things. So we're aiming to develop high-performing classification criteria. And this is a key tool needed for clinical trials when we don't have a diagnostic test. So the classification criteria serve to ensure that we have this well-characterized group of people with the disease of interest that we're studying. And we found that the existing adult classification criteria is suboptimal for classifying kids with systemic sclerosis. It performed much poorer than it does perform for adult patients. And we think that this is related to differences between juvenile onset and adult onset disease, and that we will be able to generate classification that are much better at identifying the kids with juvenile systemic sclerosis, so that we'll be in a much better shape to be able to conduct the clinical trials.
So you could hear from Dr. Lee there just the importance of really setting up criteria so that we're able to do trials for juvenile systemic sclerosis patients, which is really exciting to even be talking about this. But doing that legwork obviously is incredibly significant and a massive undertaking. And so we're very grateful to Dr. Lee and her team for taking that on. And we are delighted to support this project. And so this is just a sneak peek at one of the projects that we're funding and one of the new projects that we're funding. We are doing a series. You can check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Scleroderma for more as we roll out our interviews with all of our new investigators. And of course, you can always see all of our funded projects at scleroderma.org/research. But thank you to Dr. Lee for sharing that highlight of her newly funded project and for everything that she does for our pediatric community. So I want to share with you a little bit about some of our partnerships in research as well. So I've described, kind of at a high level, some of our programs, dug a little bit into our peer-reviewed research grants program, but want to share with you that we have other ways in which we partner to advance our research mission pillar. And one of those is we are a member of the Foundation for the NIH Biomarkers Consortium. And so through that, we're able to share the importance of scleroderma research. There's an inflammation and immunity steering committee that we're a part of. And so we're able to actually vet projects that are focused on inflammation and immunity and actually advocate for scleroderma projects as well. So that's a really exciting opportunity. And we just joined last year, actually. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of being a part of that consortium, and really important work being done there. We know there are not enough biomarkers in scleroderma, and so really grateful to be able to advance that work through the consortium. Also at the NIH, we are a part of the NIAMS Coalition. So it's a coalition of organizations that support and advance the work of the National Institute for Arthritis and Musculoskeletal and Skin Diseases. And so that group is able to advocate on behalf of increased funding for the Institute, but also share educational resources among our like-minded organizations about, our research programs, our educational programs, and things like that. We also do an outreach and education day every other year on campus at NIH, where we're able to highlight the important work being supported by the Institute and being done through the intramural research program as well. So that's a really great partnership that we've been a part of for many, many years. We, of course, also have partnerships with our corporate partners through our LINK program. And this is a new corporate philanthropy program where we're able to make connections within the community and allow our corporate partners to really have a direct impact in terms of their philanthropic dollars to support our research efforts. And then a new program that's starting soon and that you'll hear more about in the coming months is a partnership with CareBox, whereby we will be able to provide much more user-friendly ways for you to look for trials that you or a loved one may be eligible to participate in the world of scleroderma. And that collates data from our beloved clinicaltrials.gov, but again, in a much more user-friendly way that's pre-populated with some criteria that we've worked with CareBox on to make sure it's specific to our scleroderma community. So keep an eye out for that. We're really excited about that and hope that that's helpful in some trial recruitment and matching, because we know that's a big question we get is, how do I participate in research? How can I be a part of this? And so that's a way to make it a little bit easier on your end. So moving from research, I want to give you just some quick updates on some of our other mission pillars. Support groups, some of them are returning to in-person meetings now. So if you're interested in that, visit our website at scleroderma.org/support. You can learn more about all of our groups, whether they're virtual or in person. But we did roll back to in-person for those that are interested. We will always offer virtual. That was a huge hit and a huge success for people who were not able to get to in-person meetings, or just, it was much more accessible for them online. So we will continue to offer both. So check that out. And I'm also delighted to share that under our education pillar, our Conference at a Glance schedule is now available on www.scleroderma.org/conference. You can go there, and if you scroll down, you'll see this image that shows just a snapshot of some of the confirmed sessions that we have, where we have confirmed our speakers. There will be more to come, and we'll continue to update this throughout the coming months. Early bird registration does end May 21st, so be sure to register as soon as possible. We're excited to see you all there. We're so excited that our celebrity ambassador, Ashley Barron, will be on site for a special performance honoring our 25th anniversary that Friday night. So really hope that you all can make it for that, and just look forward to seeing everyone in person again. If you're not able to join us in person, of course, there is that virtual option, and you can register for that as well at scleroderma.org/conference. So looking at fundraising, just wanted to share that from July 1st through March 31st, our Scleroderma community members, our corporate partners, families, and individuals have cumulatively contributed $3.3 million toward our mission pillars. So thank you very much. We're so grateful for your support and want to be good stewards of your resources through meetings like this, where we share what we're doing with those resources. Of course, we're also celebrating 20 years of our Stepping Out to Cure Scleroderma walks. So hope that you will participate in one of those. We have between 30 and 40 walks a year, so hopefully there is one near you. And then I also mentioned our new corporate philanthropy program link, which we're delighted to have some corporate partners participating in philanthropy as well. So speaking of stepping out, you can find a walk near you by going to scleroderma.org/stepping out. This is a picture of one of our champions from our Florida walk this February. Such a great time. I'm looking forward to being in Manhattan in June for that walk, so hope to see some of you there. But this is just such a great way to come together to show your support and to raise much needed funds for the foundation. So thank you to everyone who leads a walk or participates or just helps us get the word out. This is such a great program. And then finally, always want to close by sharing in transparency the financial health of the organization. So as of March 31st, our most recently closed financial month, we're sitting at just over $12 million in net assets. 11.7 of that is in cash and investments. We always look at our reserves of how much we have, how many resources we have in reserves, how long essentially we could go if we were not to raise another dollar. And so we could go almost 2 years, 21.5 months in reserves. And then, of course, we're also always looking at how much of our money goes directly to our mission, and that's 87%. So grateful to have low overhead costs, to be able to devote more than 85% of our funds directly to our mission pillars. We have, of course, a 4-star rating on Charity Navigator and a platinum rating from Candid, which you can always check us out and read about their objective ratings online as well. And with that, I am going to stop the share, stop the recording, and take any questions from you all.